All right, winning plays is back, and the Celtics season is here, and they are 1-0 to start the year after I don't know if it was a dominant win on opening night over the Philadelphia 76ers. Tim McKone of 98.5 The Sports Stuff, who joins us today here, but I'm trying to. I'll leave this. There's many good things to talk about for that night, so I'll throw it in your court here. Like, what stood out to you the most? Like, what matters the most when you come out of that game with against the perennial contender? I feel like everyone was kind of really building up around the league entering this season for remaking their supporting cast, but it was like, no, the Celtics pretty much just took care of business there, like they seemingly always do against them.
Yeah, I'm with you. Look, I was high on the 76ers coming into this year, and that's not to say that I'm like now totally writing them off after one game. That being said, there was just so much positive momentum for the Celtics coming into this season, it felt like, that went completely sideways starting about a month ago when all of a sudden Gallinari goes down with ACL. Obviously, Robert Williams and the injury issues there, not being ready for the start of the season. Then obviously the head coaching situation for the Celtics too. So you coming off a finals run, two big signings, and then all of a sudden it felt like this thing kind of went sideways for the Celtics a little bit there. And I thought this was a statement win for a team early on in the season, like you said, against a team that I think is going to be in the mix and at the top of the Eastern Conference, or certainly one of the teams at the top of the Eastern Conference, and the 76ers. So I was impressed. And one of my big takeaways, too, is that I hope this kind of puts to bed any thoughts that, this team is going to backslide a little bit in terms of being inconsistent. My big takeaway is that it felt like last year, a lot of this stuff got unlocked in January because of Robert Williams and on the defensive end. And for me, the fact of the matter is you had two guys in Jaylen Brown and Jayson Tatum who were obviously the pillars of this franchise, taking care of business in impressive fashion and doing it without Robert Williams, who I thought was really an X factor for the Celtics in the second half of the year and certainly in the postseason, even though he wasn't 100%. So the fact that they were able to do that without Robert Williams, take on one of the top teams in the Eastern Conference and look the way they did without a full roster, impressive stuff. And to me, the bench, the fact that you have a guy like Brogdon coming off the bench is going to be a difference maker as well. And if Grant Williams can play like that, he's going to get paid at the end of this year. So we'll see what happens there too. But overall, I was impressed by the fact that they could do that against a team like the 76ers without Robert Williams in the lineup.
Yeah, the cutest screenshot of Grant Williams' agent, like fist pumping, like after every three-way thing, like let's go.
Yep.
Yeah, but let's start here with, I think, Tatum and Brown, and the stat I'm going back at now, and I'm looking at, and just with the way they played, and I think some of this is just the style now under Joe Mazzulla and the fact that Rob Williams is out. It's like, okay, like we're not going to have the dominant defense with Rob out, but we will be able to run like hell.
Yep.
And if we're going to go fully embrace the small ball five with Horford playing center and Derek White out there, like, guess what, guys? Like, if you guys just run all game long and you have the conditioning, like, you will get easy buckets. And the numbers for Tatum and Brown in this game from 2-point range were staggering.
Yeah.
Like, you look at Tatum, he was 11 of 13 from 2-point range. Jaylen was 8 of 12. So, and a lot of those were just layups. It's like you have a good game from the range. Like if these guys can get to the rim like that against, Joel Embiid as the last line of defense here, it's like they're going to be putting up points this year.
No question about it. I think it's a great point by you too. Also, I mean, Tatum did have a bit of a mid-range game goal. I felt like saying in the middle of this game, like, it is 2022, and we're not supposed to be seeing some of this stuff that Tatum was pulling off, but he was effective in the mid-range, no question about it. And like you said too, if you can attack the rim with a guy like Joel Embiid there, and again, if you can have that performance with Noah Vonleh playing 20 minutes for you against Joel Embiid as well, you're certainly going to take that as the win. But I think it's interesting the fact that you mentioned the small ball lineup there too, because you look at this roster, there's no question right now with the Gallinari obviously done and then Robert Williams out, you're going to have to go a lot smaller than what you want here too. And the fact that it was effective the way it was in game one certainly is certainly a check in the right column for the Boston Celtics, no doubt about it. I am going to be interested to see also just how they monitor Al Horford throughout the season too, because one of the things that they were watching here is, yeah, he was great in the postseason last year, but let's not forget too, he kind of had a redshirt year the year prior being in Oklahoma City, getting that shut down. So came into last year a lot fresher than what he is, coming off of a huge playoff run like he had last year. So something to monitor, I think, for sure, when you talk about kind of the lack of front court depth for the Boston Celtics.
Yeah, it's going to be a sneaky storyline through the first half of the year when with Robb out. And I think we got a preview, like I was talking with Forsberg last week, and we were just doing like over-unders for minutes for Al. And I think I put it at like 27 or something like that. And I was like under. Like they have to I think they want to try to bait him down to 25. And then in this game, you saw, like he got into foul trouble early there, but he sat a lot of the second half until like very late. And it's good that they're just going to try to get away with that as much as they can. And
yes,
I didn't, it was surprising for them to be able to do it in this game. Noah Vonleh, I think he had a pretty rough start, but then kind of just like figured it out and held his own enough once they stopped fouling every 2 seconds. But if they can just piecemeal together behind him and just have so much other scoring strength where it's like, okay, Al, we're going to play 25 minutes a game and we're going to give you that back-to-backs off and we're going to try to just keep you down as much as possible until we get some reinforcements here. I think that's going to be just as crucial to, their long-term success here, because they're obviously going to need Al in a big way. They just, you don't want them to deal with any type of injury that pops up this early in the year at this point.
No, like you said, you're trying to get by early in the start of the season, right? And make sure that you have a fresh Al for the postseason, because make no mistake about it, this team, I mean, certainly, no surprise, they have the potential to make a deep playoff run here coming off of a finals run. But you watch that performance in game one, the way that Brogdon looked again, just super efficient and just gives you something that you didn't have off the bench last year. There's no doubt about that.
It's the fit there. I mean, it's really not like he tortured the Celtics for years, I feel like, in Milwaukee. And now he kind of not phased into obscurity, but, the last couple of years of the Pacers, they just stunk. And you'd see him twice a year and that'd be all you worry about here. But now, not just from the Celtics perspective, but Brogdon's probably just like, wow, this is like, I get to be on a second unit and usually playing with one of Tatum and Brown. And so I'm not going to be seeing the other team's best defender every night now. So he just must be, frothing at the mouth here. Be like, oh man, this is just like, I can just drive all I want. And like, they're not going to worry about me that much. This is going to be great.
Yeah, no question. Any surprises for you for the Celtics in that first game?
I mean, Vonleh was definitely a surprise as the first pick off the bench. And I guess, he's what? Luke Cornett, I feel like at this point, he's coming off an ankle injury. So my guess with them is like, okay, we're just going to give that an extra couple weeks here. And they've been hyping him up all summer internally, but I don't think that, you want, okay, you're ready to go. Okay, here, go deal with Embiid here. And then beyond that, like the Kevin Gelly, train has kind of gone off the tracks the last few weeks, because he did clearly you're like, oh, you're not as good as Vonleh here. But I don't know, like until further notice here, I expect them to trade for a center down the line. And I expect there's going to be some nights where Blake Griffin's just going to be the backup center because they want to just go smaller lamps when they can against smaller front courts. But, Vonleh seems serviceable, which is a pretty big shock for a guy who was over in China last year, I feel like.
Yeah, look, a former top 10 pick, right? Went ninth to. I was all in on Vonleh coming out of Indiana, which again is probably why I'm on this podcast and not a general manager in the NBA, because I definitely had a lot of Noah Vonleh stock coming out of Indiana. But like you said too, to make the transition now, well after that point, and to come back from China and give you 20 minutes. For a guy that we found out made the roster, like 72 hours before the start of the season, that's certainly a nice addition. Yeah, no question.
Do we think? Are you a believer in Blake Griffin?
No.
Were you out in this signing when it even happened? Is this something where you're like, hopefully when everyone comes back, we don't see him? Like, or are you at the point now where you're like, give me Luke Cornett over Blake Griffin when he's healthy?
It started probably a few years ago, and I kind of throw Blake Griffin into this bucket where nobody got more hyped up for the buyout market in the second half.
Yeah, 2 years ago. Yep.
Yeah, because you're like, you just see all these big names that you remember, and what you don't you keep forgetting is that these guys haven't been able to play in 5 years. They're just names that you remember from back in the day that carry some weight, and so. For every PJ Brown that kind of makes a difference back in 2008, you also get plenty of guys like Stephon Marbury or someone like that coming in. Yeah, exactly. Another guy I was jacked up about. And so for Blake Griffin, that kind of, I throw him in that category too, where, yeah, huge name, no doubt about it. But do I think he's going to ultimately give you a lot? No, I'm not overly excited or think that he's going to be a difference maker between a banner 18 and a first round exit or something like that. No shot. Yeah.
Yeah, it's going to be, I mean, it's just one game here, but I'm really fascinated to see how they hand out these bench minutes for Joe Mazzulla here. And we'll get to him in a second here just to talk about, his debut and what we can kind of look for him going forward. But you had Hauser, 3 minutes, and I think some of that is matchup dependent there. But again, when Blake's playing over him more, that's, I think, a little bit of a surprise. Peyton Pritchard, straight up DNP, which you feel for a guy, Wade all last season, he turns it around the second half of the year when he gets an opportunity, is a big part of your run to the finals, even though he had a really rough finals. But you saw this preseason when he's closing out all those games in the fourth quarter. I'm like, this is not a good sign for his viability in the rotation. And then lo and behold, he's just not in it right now.
Look, that's the one I kind of wanted to hit on too when we talked about surprises, because I don't think it's necessarily a surprise. You can kind of see it coming that in terms of minutes, there was going to be an issue for Peyton Pritchard. But at the same time, for a guy that was playing significant minutes during that playoff run, man, I just know my personality. I wouldn't feel great about getting DNP'd at this stage either. So you kind of talk about trades moving forward too. I think it's going to be interesting to see if maybe he's one of those guys that maybe, ultimately is someone that they're comfortable moving on from, because it just doesn't feel like right now there's a huge opportunity or a need for him based on the rest of the roster.
Yeah, it feels like there's going to be, at least he's going to be trade bait. Like if they want to make a serious move, and they have this Gallinari, his salary essentially, which, they could bring him back for next year, but if they need to make a move, that's there to at least get you there. But then it's that doesn't have any value, obviously, for a guy with torn ACL. So it's you have draft picks, or you have a young, intriguing role piece like Pritchard. And who knows? I mean, maybe it's a situation now where Al Horford's going to have nights off, and maybe go super small in those nights. But I just wondered, are they going to really lean into the going super small and just play a bunch of 3-guard lineups with Pritchard and White and maybe even Brogdon coming off the bench here? But Mazzulla and his staff clearly they want to see some size out there. Yeah. And at this point, at least in this opening matchup, he's not in there, which again, just brutal for Pritchard. I don't know what to I know he dove in last year, but you thought that, you probably saw all these trades this summer and it's oh crap. This hurts.
Yeah.
Grant Williams, we touched on him a little bit earlier too. He's kind of added some sneakiness to his game, I feel offensively now, that we saw a flash of it during the preseason, but for him to be showing off this dribble drive stuff, how much do you feel that changes his upside as a player here? And do you feel he should even be starting at this point? Is there a case to be made for him to be hey, if you want to go double big here, get him in there?
Yeah, I think that's absolutely on the table. And yeah, it just feels you want to talk about a draft pick too, by the way, that, you go back and you look at Ainge and everyone talking about how, I know he nailed Tatum and Brown, but look at all these misses in the draft. And there's two things involved with that, right? Number one, if you have a late first round pick or a pick in the 20s, very rarely is that actually going to turn into something of value. And the second thing is that Grant Williams is just a home run pick by Ainge and the Celtics at that point, because that's a guy that just continued to develop, continued to add to his game. And now you're looking at a guy that can was a key contributor last year, but now it feels could take that next step forward too, like you said. And if he continues to play and kind of flash the way he has, then he made the right decision, because he's going to cash in as a restricted free agent at the end of the season.
Yeah, I'm not shocked that they didn't reach an extension there, since the Celtics, I feel they're pretty committed with money already for next year, so they probably don't want to, add more on top of that this early. But from Grant's perspective, he probably sees this year as this is a huge opportunity, because with the Robb injury, with the Gallinari injury, they're going to need him minimum 25, probably 30 minutes a night. And so if he thinks he added a lot to his game, that's where you get paid, is you put up those numbers. Joe Mazzulla, pretty fun debut for him. Got the water bath in the locker room. it's kind of funny when they're giving this guy a water bet. You're like, oh man, and he's like, Al Horford's giving him water. He's 2 years older than this guy.
Yeah,
your new head coach, but he took it like a champ. What's the biggest thing that stood out for you in terms of like his coaching style here, if anything, out of this game or even the preseason going forward here?
Look, I think his personality is exactly what this team needs, to be honest with you. And so a bit of a backstory. I used to work in Rhode Island at NBC for 5 years. And obviously he's from Rhode Island and his family's kind of Rhode Island basketball royalty, right? So his brother went to George Washington to play and then ultimately wound up at Vermont. And his dad is was a Rhode Island legend. As well. His dad was played at Bryant and was very well known. So he played, I should say, at West Virginia. If you guys remember those teams, those Huggins teams in the the late 2000s, early 2010s, they were just kind of like punch you in the mouth. We're here, and this is kind of who we are, and that's kind of the way that he's played throughout his career. And I think that mindset too is certainly something that this team, which we've seen in years prior, could kind of be passive and not super engaged. That's just not his personality. And so I think that that's going to be a nice fit in kind of what this group needs. And that's what I'm excited about when it comes to Mazzulla. Like you said, too, just the small ball lineups and the possibilities here with this roster and the way that it's currently constituted, I think is exciting too. And I'm excited to see kind of how they continue to evolve here at the start of the season, because I think we saw it last year with Ime too, trying some things out, figuring some stuff out. And I think Mazzulla is going to do that with this roster here over the next few weeks to start the season. So I think that's kind of a wait and see thing. But I just think personality wise, it's exactly what this group needs. There's no doubt about that.
Yeah, it seems like from that point, in terms of that's something that Ime was doing too, a good person to take the torch on that front, like, and maintain that and bring it up. And then, as far as like the mentality and like the guard standpoint, I feel like it is this is a type of team that it's valuable to have a guard as a coach to be like, hey guys, we need better offense. Like if you run fast, if you actually like run some sets, like feel like there really wasn't a lot of isolation, like clunkiness in that opening game. And we'll see. I mean, it's just one game here. They have some tougher tests coming up. They go back to Miami on Friday night here. They play a Chicago team on Monday night that surprised the Heat down there too. So there'll be some intriguing matchups there. But if they just get away from that stuff and like really embrace this mentality, which it seems like they've done during this preseason and this opening week here, like that could open the door to a lot for this team, and really extend the amount of ways they can play effectively when Rob Williams gets back. Because I feel like last year they found the right formula, but playing super small was never a formula that worked well for them, especially like early in the year.
No, it's a great point. I'm excited. And look, it's only one game, but just doesn't feel like this team's going to backslide anymore. And obviously we know Tatum and Brown have gotten to a point now where they're set. Look, Jayson Tatum was first team All NBA, right? Like he's the definition of established. But I just think now they're at a
sneaky
point
MVP. Is MVP talk for Tatum? Is that like, where are you putting him in your MVP rankings right now? Like,
look, MVP is tough, man. MVP
is oh yeah, but like, what? Give me your odds for like realistically for the full season here. Like, where do you put it if you had to be like, all right, is he within the top 5, top 10, like of realistically being able to do it? Like, where do you feel like he could actually, sustain this type of level that we saw?
So let me say this. Over at 98.5 The Sports Hub, we have 2 betting guys, the Bankroll boys, Dan Lifshatz and Joe Murray. They're fantastic. I am not one of those guys. I started betting right out of school. I think I lost my first 11 bets ever, and I've never done it since. So I'm not the guy that you want to talk to when it comes to odds. I'll say this. For me, Tatum's in the top 10, though. I think he gets a top 10 MVP candidate. But I just look across the landscape of the NBA, and there are going to be other guys, whether it's Luka. I just think, this team has enough pieces here, and obviously he's going to be the leader of it, but there are going to be nights where Jalen kind of goes off and other people maybe, carry that torch a little bit. So I think first team All-NBA could definitely happen again. And that would be a hell of an accomplishment, right? So like if Kevin Durant stays healthy this year and Jayson Tatum's still first team and All NBA, that's a huge accomplishment for Jayson Tatum. And but I think more to the point too, both of those guys are established, and I think this team's established. Like I don't think you're going to see a backslide anymore. I think that they've arrived as kind of a perennial power here for as long as both Jalen and Jayson Tatum are on this roster.
Yeah, it's that finding out that formula and having it transfer over to this year was going to be a little bit of a question mark, but I think that the way they looked in the preseason, the way they looked in that opening night against the real opponent, I think it makes the fact, okay, like they're not going to have to like slug through, 500 or just over 500 till Rob gets back. It's like, no, we can just kind of take your time, Rob. Like, we can do this, and you'll just be a luxury, hopefully, whenever December, January, whenever he gets back into the fold here.
Isn't it funny, by the way, I can't count how many shows I've done with you, Rob, over the years. And we've spent so much time talking about like, all right, who could potentially be that star that the Celtics kind of bring in to put over the top, or even stars that they acquired, whether it's Kyrie, Kemba, Gordon Hayward, all of these guys. Like, what's the formula? And it turns out it really was, just draft two guys, which again, I don't think you can oversell how impressive it is to walk away with two like franchise cornerstone players with the number 3 pick in Jaylen, and then obviously dropping back and taking Tatum, and those two guys blossoming them into two guys that can lead you to a finals and potentially a championship it's ridiculous. But it's funny how much time we spent, and ultimately the two guys that are going to do it were on your roster the whole time, right?
It is nuts through all those sliding doors moments and all those opportunities to move them. Like, this is even this freaking past summer when the Durant stuff came up. It's like, and back then you had the vast majority of the Celtics fan base, I feel like, was saying, nope, like, don't even consider moving Jaylen. And then, the way he's come out this season, these last few weeks already, is like, okay, this is a guy that, he's obviously playing for, not to just get back to an all-star level, but to get back to something even, beyond that potentially. With his potential extension coming up for him this summer. All right, let's close out here. Let's bounce around the league a little bit. We're recording this on Thursday, so pretty much every team's been in action here, short of the Clippers and the Bucks so far. We got to hit on the Nets real quick, since that getting their doors blown off at home by the Pelicans to open the season. It's you look at that, you look at the Heat losing at home to the Bulls, and all these, the East would look like to be like, oh, this is going to be a huge collection of juggernauts here. And now you wonder, like, okay, there are like the teams that have dysfunction, or the teams that just might be getting old. Like, are they showing themselves early here?
Yeah, look, the Nets, to me, nobody was smiling more yesterday because I've just been pounding the table. Coming off the offseason that the Nets did, all right, Kyrie was Kyrie, right? And we thought he was probably out the door. You had Kevin Durant ask for a trade, not only ask for a trade, but publicly get leaked that he wants both Sean Marks and Steve Nash gone. Both of those guys, by the way, are back, on top of the fact that both Kevin Durant, Kyrie Irving, throw Ben Simmons into the mix as well, and everything that's going on there too. And I just don't know, like, how you could sit there with all those distractions and go, oh, this team's just going to suddenly figure it out and they're going to be a fine. No, there's going to be issues with that. There's no way that mix. And maybe they get hot here. Maybe they start out winning. Maybe they, coming off of last night, they win 10 in a row. Fine, whatever. I'm still not going to buy it. There's no way you can sell me on this team sticking together for a full season with the mix that they currently have and think that they're suddenly going to be in the mix. I just don't buy it, and I can't wait to see what shoe drops next, because something is going to happen with one of those guys. Make no mistake about it. And no, I have not bought into the Nets as a true contender in the Eastern Conference this year, and I will not buy into the Nets as a true contender this season. That was my big takeaway.
I mean, come on, Joe Harris, Seth Curry, don't need to come back here.
Yeah.
I think it's really good. Like, it's like you can't escape the fact, I think, beyond the dysfunction stuff you mentioned, with all those guys involved, it's like there's no one on this team that plays defense. And you have like you said, and then with the turmoil and the drama with the Steve Nash situation there, like, he's not going to get this team playing defense all of a sudden. And so that's just a problem you're not going to be able to solve, I feel like. And whether Kyrie just like plays his way out of town, where they're like, okay, he's going to leave anyway, so it's like just like trade him now and hopefully try to like free us of that, or whether that alienates Durant even more. But for the people that are like, oh, I don't know, look out for Brooklyn here, I'm with you. It's just like a situation here where I think there's too much of a hill to overcome for them to like get themselves out of this.
Yeah, I just don't buy it. Like you said, defensively too. But then, I'll see tweets like, oh, I'll tell you what though, Kyrie's, he's got to play, contract. I'm like, were you not in Boston for 2019?
Yeah, right, I know.
Contract year. What are you talking about? What are you talking about? Yeah, ridiculous. Absolutely ridiculous.
Even though he probably realizes now that, like, listen, like, you're not getting the max from anyone anymore.
No.
If he does this, like, who's gonna give it to him? Like, I guess the Lakers, if they're like that desperate, but I think the Lakers can look at what they looked like opening day and be like, is Kyrie going to really solve our problems here? Like,
right.
Yeah. You hesitated that, but that's a situation to watch. We got to talk about the Jazz coming in. Will Hardy trying to get himself fired by blowing out the supposedly contending Nuggets on opening night there. Is this going to be 2013 Celtics all over again, where Brad Stevens with Will Hardy playing his role is just going to be winning too much of a bunch of cast-offs here?
I'll tell you what. I mean, like, look, you have some wiggle room now with the new draft odds, right? Because isn't it like the top 4 have 14%? So maybe you can sneak in a couple of wins like that. But yeah, make no mistake about it. Danny Ainge is probably going to make sure that doesn't happen too frequently, right? Like you got to get in that top 4 because I don't know if you're a buyer in Victor, but man, I'll tell you what. Some of the stuff I watch, I don't get it. It breaks my brain watching him play. It's insane. So you absolutely want to be in the mix, and Utah certainly wants to be in the mix for that number 1 pick this year. So yeah, I'm sure that was a nice way to start the year. But what was it? I'm trying to remember the 76ers. There was that one year when they started out, I think it was 3-0, and then they wound up.
That's right.
I forget what wins one, right?
They're probably like 15 wins. Yeah, so it is early here. So,
yeah, maybe you get something like that. But yeah, that was a nice start for his coaching career, no doubt.
Yeah, so that's a fun situation to keep an eye on there, especially on the heels of did you see the story that Whit Grossbeck said that Danny tried to steal Joe Mazzulla too this summer as, I think, a top assistant for Will Hardy, and that got shut down, which
that's a good thing too. Yeah, seriously.
I think that's they probably had an idea, an investigation was going on at that point. So I think that was a pretty savvy move by the front office.
Yeah.
All right. Well, anyway, what else? Anything else around the league last night?
And then I know we were texting last night about the Pelicans, and obviously, I think everyone coming off of last year and then adding Zion thinks that they're going to be frisky, but watching Zion, I mean, the guy is a moose. He's huge, but that's going to be one of those teams that you're going to want to watch a lot of this season for sure. And then, like you said too, it's going to be interesting to see how the rest of this Eastern Conference shakes out with the Celtics and everything like that. I still do kind of buy the 76ers a little bit, but we'll see kind of how everything shakes out here moving forward. But it's just nice to actually have basketball back, no question.
It is. And I think, like, the Sixers, you look at their line, I mean, Maxey looks really good.
Yeah.
The bench pieces, they're not nothing special, but they should help. And I think, honestly, the Celtics are a really terrible matchup for them. In general, because I just did, PJ Tucker is not going to be able to guard Tatum or Brown, like, effectively for, 30-plus minutes in these games. So I expect them to, destroy plenty of other inferior teams around the league. But I just don't think, until further notice, like, Harden looked a little bit better last night too, but he did. But still, the defense is just like that. Yeah. Those warts just don't go away when it matters. So until something else changes there, they get him some real defenders around him. Like, I just don't fully buy them as a contender. Yeah. All right. Well, Celtics coming up, 3-game road trip this weekend at Chicago, at Miami, at Orlando. Really big night. Did you see Banchero's opening night there? Like, look out.
I was going to say, Powell, I'll tell you what, showing you why he was the number 1 pick, right? So, no, that's another one of the teams you kind of want to check out with some of the young pieces that they have on that roster. But, yeah, what was it? I think he had 27 last night. So, yeah, we'll see. Not a Duke guy, so I'm not necessarily rooting for him by any stretch of the imagination, but he was impressive. He was impressive.
No, that'll be fun to watch on Saturday night, because usually watching the Magic is not really a fun watching in general.
Appointment viewing.
Not appointment viewing in general. So,
for sure.
But all right, Tim McKone, make sure you're following him on Twitter at Tim_McKone. Check him out, obviously, regularly on 98.5 The Sports Hub. And we'll be back with you guys next week to break down what this team looks like after their first road trip of the year.